Welcome. Welcome to Just Talking on this day, which the snow has just bypassed us, where I am. So it's going to be interesting. It's flying across the city right now. And I'm here with my partner in crime, Aisha Dami Magueda. Let's do a shimmy. I just feel like we need to lighten things up a little bit this week. There's lots of craziness going on. And we've got Navi Bliss in the fashionable mask.
Very cute.
Is that like a little kitty? What is
it? It's a woman.
Oh, it is a woman. Oh my God.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Oh,
yeah. Sweet.
I love that about the mask. Don't you? That it's like, it's been a creative expression, like a men's tie.
Well, yeah, I mean, when they first made them mandatory, I was like, okay, I need to go out and get ones that are going to match my different outfits.
You can
fashion forward.
Exactly. So today, as you know, myself, Aisha, the language of love. So she talked about how we need to talk to ourselves in a loving manner first. That was what happened. I hope everybody had a really nice long weekend on the family day weekend that we had here in Ontario. And of course, the week before we talked about the emotions of love, that love is really, it's an action in my world. And now this week we're joined by Navi Bliss. And while we were sort of, because she's a relationship and love coach and she's fabulous. So anybody that's interested in just getting a better perspective on how you might be getting into relationships or what you may be bringing to relationships, I think she's fabulous. I've had quite a few conversations with her. So Navi's joining us today. Now, I'm just going to start it off by saying we have an unusual situation in the world right now. And since we're talking about love, we're talking about the emotional aspect of how do we hold space for each other in relationships. That can be with our families, because again, Aisha and I did talk about families, friends, all different business relationships, but specifically right now, there might be different emotions that people can't necessarily put words to. They can't necessarily say exactly what it is that they're feeling. So how do we, while we may be in that same place, hold space for each other in romantic relationships, in friendships, and how do we keep that as safe as possible for all of us? What do you think, Aisha?
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking about the practice of love and that is a good word to use for it. It's the practice of love, because you don't just do actions or have emotions in one go. It's something that happens, ebbs and flows, continues day after day after day. So definitely holding space for people and showing your emotions is very important, and being able to interact and connect on a deeper level is really important as well. So I completely agree with that. And Navi, I'd love to hear from you in terms of, when you're talking with people about love practices, what are some things that come up in terms of creating that regularity of showing and giving and receiving love?
So when we're talking about holding space for someone and all of the things that are going on, the most important thing is giving space for someone to be themselves. And that means that you allow space for them to hold their own opinion, and it doesn't have to be the same as your opinion. It doesn't have to be your view on things, but they're allowed the safety to be themselves. And you can be present enough to listen to what they have to say without having to agree with it, right? And recognizing that if you're unable to listen to what someone has to say and you need them to agree with you, that is a personal trigger and wounding that you have to work through.
Oh, awesome point, Navi.
Yeah.
And again, this is this is the neat part. When it gets into getting a coach, you have a business coach because they focus on business, I love that Navi just demonstrated one of the reasons why she is a relationship and love coach, because that is exactly it. It's all about taking responsibility for whatever you bring to that conversation, right? And in some cases, if you don't feel that that's the time for you to communicate, and this is what Aisha's talked about before, that you say, you know what, I can't talk about this right now, and you ask for space, you ask for, you ask for that respect of space. And then the other thing that I just want to throw in, because, if I don't talk about some sort of physical something right now, when we have something and we don't know how to express it, the best way to get things moving is literally go for a walk, do something physical, get up, get out of the room, get out of the space, go for a walk if you can, right? Because that helps you. There's something that's called diffuse thinking, which is basically, how you get your best ideas in the shower. So if you're really pondering a point, give yourself space to let your mind and your heart talk to each other, right? So give your body space to process or to literally get this stuff moving. And so that would be one of the things I would add to it. What do you think, Aisha?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that when it's difficult to talk about things, it is important to create that space, to be able to connect with yourself, to be able to find that space within yourself to, first of all, deal with what you're dealing with, and then open up that space for other people. Now, I know through the pandemic, we've seen a lot of things happen with people emotionally. Some people have gotten closer, but there's also been a lot of isolation. There's also been a lot of kind of fracturing of relationships. So Navi, I'd love to hear from you about how people navigate this when relationships maybe are already challenged with other things, and there are things that need to be talked about. So what advice would you have for people that want to kind of work through that kind of dynamic?
If you have a relationship that is fractured, that has become distant because of COVID, right? I think the important thing to realize is what happened, right? Like sort of take like a step back and realize what happened. And the thing is, like, if you were in a mess of your own feelings, you were going through a lot and you withdrew from people, I think the first step is just to take responsibility, because like when someone is in that place, they want acknowledgement. They want to know that their experience is acknowledged before they can move past it. And sometimes we're in a rush to fix things and we don't want to take the time to acknowledge someone's experience, and that can be really frustrating for the other person, and they don't want to come together, and they don't want to accept your apology because they need a minute for their feelings to be acknowledged. So the first is just like sort of realizing what happened, and it could be that like maybe it's the other person that grew distant and you're wanting to fix it, and then just sort of like going to them and saying, hey, I miss you, and maybe you were going through a really rough time and you needed to withdraw because you were going through a rough time, but the lines of communication, I would like them for them to be open between us. So what do you think about that? Are you ready to come forward and just sort of ask where they're at and if they're willing to start mending things on their side?
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. I really love that, because what it does is it just creates that space for people to be where they are, for you to be where you are, and for them to be where they are, and to see where you can actually make that connection. Because you're right, and I know I've been like that sometimes, where I try and fix, and if that's a habit that you have, if that's some kind of socialization that you've grown up with or you've experienced over your life, then it's something where we need to check ourselves and go, okay, this is not about taking responsibility for fixing everything. It's about just creating that space to have a dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that, because the other thing is that we are human beings, and acceptance, and I know, for instance, there's a lot of people that may have past trauma be triggered through some of the events that have happened and not feeling safe, but maybe you don't know what that feels like in your body. So if that is you, make sure you talk to a professional, because hypervigilance is something that's going to come on. This is becoming more of a more of a word these days that people are hearing. But, you know, when we don't feel loved and accepted by the most important people in our lives, that can cause a lack of safety or loss of safety in ourselves, right? So I love all of that, you know, and I love the tenderness, Navi, about just, I miss you, you know, I miss you. Like, and even if, you know, I think another thing is that when we look at our relationships, is this something that's like a red flag that you looked past before? Is this something that's like, because that's the first thing, because it is about safety, really. We all first have to feel safe and feel loved and accepted. But it's like, how do we get it so that we are making sure that our relationships are as solid as we thought they were? Because I think that's what happened to a lot of people too, that all of a sudden it was like, it's bringing out aspects that we wouldn't have in a normal, if we never had COVID, we wouldn't have found out certain things about people or what their beliefs were, because there was never a conversation that would bring up that particular aspect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, or even about ourselves.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people have all of a sudden been confronted with, oh my gosh, who am I? What do I want? You know, and that's also another thing, right? Navi, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And there's also this, I think people have changed a lot because of this.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, like, not every relationship is supposed to last forever, and that's okay. And the thing is, you can even let go of somebody with kindness and tenderness, because I've realized this in my life. Like, I've changed in so many different moments, right? And the pandemic changed me too. And there were people that were friends with a different version of me, and they wanted to continue to be friends with that version of me, but that person doesn't exist anymore. Exactly. And like, that's true on both ends for so many people.
And yeah, I love this conversation, right? Because that's it. Just even having this kind of conversation, that it's okay. It's okay for change to come. And that's the one thing that I think many people always thought, that they could control their world. And now even more so, you can only control this, and how you choose to show up, right? So, sorry,
yeah.
I want to say something there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think navigating that space where there's change can be challenging. I think, and I'm not a big fan of the word control, because that's an illusion. We don't have control over what's happening. We're really just trying to navigate it, right? So it's just a question of how to navigate it, and then navigating that space where I talked about this over Valentine's Day. Like, if you don't show me love 364 days of the year, this one day is not going to make any difference. And if you do show me love 364 other days of the year, this one day isn't going to make any difference either, right? Because it's the practice of it, is how do we continue to show up? How do we continue to be there with and for each other, right? And when people are changing, how do you navigate that space if you're not the same, or they're not the same, or you've realized this isn't what you want anymore? Because those are the really difficult conversations, right? And Navi, how would you support people to kind of navigate that space where there's change happening and they don't have the language, and they don't sometimes have the awareness of how to deal with that?
So one, I think it's always okay, you know, Gwenda said this already, but like, to take a step back, right? Because sometimes it's just, we feel like we have to make a decision in the moment, or we don't know. And it's okay to tell somebody, you know, if you're deciding whether to continue a relationship, whether it's changed too much and you can't continue it, I think it's okay to just let someone know that you need some time and space to think about it, and you need to take a step back. And it's good if they take a step back, and you can have a conversation more than one time, so that it doesn't become so emotionally charged. So you're speaking from your heart and not from your wounding and your triggers.
Love that. And that's the whole thing. It's like, now we talk about the cliche, if you love something, let it go. If it comes back, it's yours. If it doesn't, it never was. And that's the funny thing about cliches. They're based in fact, like that, you know, if you love somebody enough, you can love them and know that you're not right anymore. you can still have feelings and fondness, right? That's a great part about being human. We can feel 50 different emotions at the same time. The challenge is for us to actually be aware that that's what's going on. And my last little addition here is the one thing I love about the grief recovery method is the three big things that we demonstrate is actually listening. Like, don't say, like, let people talk. And then when you're finished, so listening, and the other part is listening to somebody else, and also the act of actually being heard. And sometimes in relationships, if that's not already there, being in a place where things are stressful doesn't make that any easier to manage. Aisha?
Mhm. Actually, Navi, because I know you have to go right at 5 o'clock. So I want to give you some space to be able to, yeah.
Navi, yeah.
Oh, so what I was going to say is, like, I think another thing that people do is, right, and this is also just to know that you're coming from a place of your wounding if you're doing this, is try to pre-decide how they're going to feel, right? Because sometimes we can get really wounded if somebody else needs to take a step back, right, in a relationship. And taking a step back doesn't mean that it's the end. Sometimes it can just mean it's a step back, and we can pre-decide how we feel, and we can get into this place where it's like, okay, if they come back, then I'm going to say this, or I'm going to do this, right? And that's something that I make a point of not doing, because that isn't really honoring my authentic feelings. That isn't honoring my heart. It's allowing the space to allow myself to feel whatever I feel when that person comes back. So if somebody was to take a step away from me, for an example, they could come back, and at that moment, maybe I feel ready to receive them. Maybe I feel open to understand them. Maybe we can be in alignment again. And maybe I won't feel that way. Maybe I will feel like that my life is better off without them, and that the space that they created was space that I needed in my life, right? And I think it's just, not pre-deciding how you feel can just do so much to empower your relationships and authenticity and flow.
So when you say pre-deciding, you mean pre-deciding how the other person feels, or pre-deciding how you feel?
Both, right? Because I mean, pre-deciding how the other person feels is just like projecting usually our insecurities onto them. And pre-deciding how we feel is, if we feel slighted by a person taking a step back or from us, or something of that sort, and then we can decide, okay, well, I'm not going to let this person back into my life if they want to come back in, or I'm going to be so angry, or and it's like, it's okay if you feel angry, but it's just it's not helpful to pre-decide that you're going to feel that way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think for me, coming from a purposeful communication perspective, I feel like it's very important for people to know their hearts. I think you have to know your heart in terms of where you are in a relationship and what you want for yourself. And so I think you're absolutely right that sometimes, for example, what I've seen in my practice is people are often uncomfortable with silence. So if there's silence from the other side, all kinds of things come up. And like you use that word wounding, a lot of emotions around wounding come up, and they fill that space, right? So I totally take your point that you want to be mindful, you want to be tender with yourself to say, where is this coming from? Why do I feel this way? What am I putting into the silence that perhaps is not there? Because sometimes people are silent because they need space, because they think you need space, because there just needs to be a little bit of space between the two of you that you're not able to give, but they're able to give. And so reading stuff into that, projecting things into that can be very challenging. It's doing that excavation work. It's really understanding yourself, where that stuff is coming from, and what's related to the actual relationship, and what are you bringing in from the past that actually doesn't even belong here, right?
And in some cases, you might not even, it might be as much of a surprise to you, especially when we have unusual events. That's where the triggers come from, is that it's not just a wounding, because sometimes we know where our baggage is, and we know the Samsonites, we know how many we have, but it's like, that's the whole thing about a real trigger, is that something happens and you feel more emotional. It's more important for you. Again, both of you ladies have said about emotional knowing, right?
Hmm.
That it's like, oh, where's that coming from? And then to take a step back from that, because again, when we go places we've never been, we're feeling ways that we may never have consciously felt before. So it's important to really be present. And I love that pre-deciding. I love that term, right? Because it's like, you look at the world that we have with, all the reality shows. It's like, well, I'm going to get up in your face. It's like, don't get in anybody's face. Let's just have, the other thing, like if you're in business, if you're on a stage, take that 2 beats of silence, negotiating, leave it. They'll talk to you when they're ready. So, and all of this is all connected. We're all human. This is how we connect. So we're at 4:56 and I'm cognizant of your time. Navi, do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
I guess my last thoughts are, the biggest way that, you can take care of others, and I know both of you have talked about this before, is just by, taking care of yourself, right? If you can take care of yourself, that's when you can be the biggest gift to the world, to your relationships, because your pain, your suffering, and your wounding, this doesn't serve anyone's good, and it doesn't allow you to show up as your highest self, to be able to serve the world, to be able to do more. And even if you want to support people who are going through tough times right now, the best way you can do that is by first taking care of yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I was just agreeing. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, yeah. Great, that's wonderful. Navi, thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your insights. I know our audience is going to find them very, very helpful. And how can people get in touch with you? Do you have a website, someplace on Facebook where they can get in touch with you if they want more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just at Navi Bliss across all platforms. And I'm on Instagram the most. So that's the best place to get in contact with me. And then my website is also naviblisscoaching.com. And I have a free download on there of how to step into a queen mindset for dating. So if someone is looking for a good place to get started, the free download is that.
Nice.
Wonderful.
I feel
That's
like we need to
amazing.
do a triple snap here.
And we'll have all of Navi's contact information on the page as well. So
Absolutely. And even with what you've just brought up, it's just Marianne Williamson. Who am I to be brilliant, talented, gorgeous, and fabulous? Who are you not to be? Your playing small does not serve the world, And I think we all need to keep that in mind right now, that letting our light shine lets others' lights shine as well. And so I loved it, Navi, and allowing our light to be schmengi free. So make sure that we keep that the lens clean. That's the best gift we can do, because we all need to know where the next step is, right? So
thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to have a chance to speak with you ladies, and thank you for doing this every week and sharing your thoughts and wisdom with the world. I am sure that it helps a lot of people. So just thank you guys for doing what you do.
well, thank
oh,
you.
thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. Thank you.
And next month is going to be honesty. So that's
Yes.
going to be an interesting chat.
It'll be fun.
Okay, so
All right.
thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Navi.
Have a
Thanks,
great day.
everyone.
Have a great weekend. Stay warm. And it's just you and I, Aisha. Oh, any last words?
I think it was a great conversation. I think Navi brought a lot of great insights to the discussion, and I love, her approach is very, like you said, it's very tender, it's very caring, it's very collaborative, it's very open, and that those are all elements of the practice of love, which is what we're talking about this week. And I hope that it was helpful. I'd love to hear your comments, folks. If you have anything you want to share with us or any questions, then please let us know. Yeah, I loved it. You, Gwen, how about you?
I just love you guys. I just, Navi hit it out of the park. I always love chatting with you because it's always an interesting conversation, right? So
Likewise, my love. Likewise. Thank you.
okay. So everybody, we'll see you next week, right here, same time, same bat time, same bat channel.
That channel. That's right.
Okay.
Bye. Love you.
Here, love you. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.